10 Best ArrowVerse Villains Ranked. The Arrowverse may have been better known for its heroes, but the franchise managed to put some incredible villains to screen over the years, as well. Spanning 6 live-action TV shows and numerous crossover events, the timeline of the Arrowverse crafted a DC Comics universe over the course of 11 years. Among the many characters of the franchise are some devious villains that were a treat to watch week to week. The best Arrowverse villains managed to put new twists on well-known DC Comics characters, adapting them for the small screen, often for the first time. While some Arrowverse villains were wasted with too little screen time or development, others became haunting recurring threats that justified their presence with brilliant performances, stunning plot developments, and sheer cool factor. Even if some accomplished these feats better than others, the shared universe as a whole has plenty of antagonists worth celebrating. 10. Lex Luthor in Supergirl. One of the most iconic and ubiquitous DC villains ever made, it's no wonder that Lex Luthor became a prominent figure in the Arrowverse, even if it was relatively late into the series' genesis. His debut in the cast of Supergirl was a massive moment not only for that show in particular, but for the Arrowverse as a whole. Finally codifying DC's premier villainous mastermind into the mix. That being said, Luthor's presence didn't truly come online until he became the primary antagonist of the massive Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover. Compared to other live-action adaptations of Lex Luthor, Jon Cryer was something of an unexpected choice. But the Emmy-winning actor proved his abilities as a sly, intelligent Luthor with few morals to speak of. If only Luthor had more time in the Arrowverse, particularly across from David Cornswett's Superman, his potential could have been lifted even higher. 9. Savitar from The Flash. Barry Allen is such a compelling hero that it makes sense he would be just as interesting as a villain as well. Enter Savitar, the dark reflection of Barry Allen from an erased future. No matter how many times he's imprisoned within the Speed Force, Savitar finds a way to come racing back to Team Flash, ensuring his own survival through the heartless murder of others. Savitar has an intense aura, from the initial mystery of his identity to his cryptic prophecies and his effortlessly cool Speed Force armor. In terms of cool factor, he's easily one of the strongest villains the Arrowverse has to offer, matching Barry Allen in speed as a literal copy of him. If there's one thing that holds Savitar back, however, it's his eye-rolling obsession with being the god of speed, something that makes him harder to understand and root for as a character. 8. Damien Darhk from Arrow. The Arrowverse has a knack for expanding on lesser-known comics characters to make them into memorable villains, and Damien Darhk might just be the best example of this. A sorcerer and assassin who managed to evade death for centuries thanks to the Lazarus Pits of Ra's al Ghul, Damien Darhk makes numerous appearances throughout the Arrowverse, most notably in DC's Legends of Tomorrow and Arrow. At once threatening and comedic, Damien Darhk is a multifaceted villain with a lot to appreciate. While his numerous magical powers and centuries of experience are dangerous enough, it's his cunning that makes Darhk such a deadly opponent. Granted, his depiction in Arrow isn't as strong as the threat he evolves to be in DC's Legends of Tomorrow, giving him something of an uneven showing across the franchise. Still, by the time he's defeated for good, it's hard not to mourn his presence in the Arrowverse. 7. Tobias Whale from Black Lightning. Black Lightning is perhaps the Arrowverse's single most underrated show, and it figures that the series would introduce one of the franchise's most underrated villains. Black Lightning's main nemesis in the series, Tobias Whale, is essentially the Arrowverse equivalent of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's Kingpin. A ruthless crime boss in charge of the influential gang, the 100, not to mention a local politician, it's easy to see shades of Wilson Fisk's greatness in Tobias Whale. Tobias has one of the most tragic backstories of any Arrowverse villain, abused as a child due to his albinism only for it to fuel his lust for power. Marvin Crondon Jones III is able to feed the character a lot of subtle depth that went woefully underappreciated by the Arrowverse as a whole. If only the series he was trapped in wasn't so overlooked and brief, Tobias Whale could easily be a much bigger name in Arrowverse history. 6. Malcolm Merlyn from Arrow. The ultimate evil version of Green Arrow, the Dark Archer Malcolm Merlyn was essentially the first major villain of the entire series. Even after so many spin-offs later, he still remains one of the most compelling, as well, presenting a persistent challenge for Oliver Queen to grapple with. Merlyn would even occasionally put his differences aside to work with Green Arrow, making him a surprisingly well-thought-out character with complex goals and aspirations. That being said, most of the entertainment value of Merlyn comes from his sheer personal hatred of Oliver Queen, making him one of the pettiest comic book villains ever adapted for TV. It's a joy to watch him return again and again in Arrow, even if the series does find increasingly ridiculous ways to bring him back via flashback. The showrunner's love for Merlyn might be a little stronger than fans, but it's easy to see why the Dark Archer was so good to rely on. 5. Captain Cold from The Flash. Calling Captain Cold a straight-up villain may be something of a misnomer, but it's impossible to mention the best Arrowverse characters that flirted with villainy without bringing up Leonard Snart. A thief with a heart of gold, Captain Cold begins his life in the Arrowverse as a typical villain of the week in The Flash. Never a completely evil criminal, Cold ends up getting recruited to the cast of DC's Legends of Tomorrow, turning over a new leaf as a reluctant anti-hero. Whether a hero or a villain, Captain Cold's snarky sense of humor and ability to punch above his weight class as a normal human with a powerful freeze ray is endlessly endearing. Even as a criminal, Captain Cold adhered to a strict personal code, making him helplessly likable, even on the wrong side of a law. Cold's ultimate heroic sacrifice may dilute his strength as a villain, but he's worth mentioning as one of the universe's best morally gray characters. 4. Zoom from The Flash. Of all the characters that serve as an evil reflection of Barry Allen, Zoom is by far one of the most compelling. Like Barry, Hunter Zolomon had to contend with the death of his mother at an early age, but rather than giving him a strong sense of justice, it made him a callous serial killer. Zoom's actions are some of the most insidious of any Arrowverse villain, breaking the morale of Team Flash like never before. Zoom's deceitful guise as Jay Garrick was so convincing, he managed to become one of Barry's closest confidants and Caitlyn's lover, all the while secretly harboring a sinister plan. His actions ultimately resulted in one of the most alarming threats to the entire Arrowverse, making him one of the most impactful villains the series has ever seen. It's a shame that he's overshadowed by another evil Flash, a trope the Flash relied on perhaps a touch too frequently. 3. Prometheus from Arrow. Prometheus was astonishingly able to get Oliver to admit that he enjoyed killing, putting into perspective his entire ethos while serving as a living reminder of the dangers of breaking the no-kill rule. Played by Josh Segarra of Scream VI's cast, the character is able to serve as a vicious foil to Oliver's insecurities and doubts. Even in death, Prometheus wasn't content to let Oliver get the last word, killing himself alongside the mother of Oliver's child in a dramatic final act of villainy. 2. Deathstroke from Arrow. Seeing Deathstroke brought to life in a comic-accurate costume by Manu Bennett is a joy unique to the Arrowverse, with the DCEU's brief attempt at Deathstroke falling far short in comparison. Like Prometheus, Deathstroke tortured Oliver with devious ethical dilemmas and terror attacks, proving himself as one of the most dangerous men on the planet. It's safe to say that Green Arrow's encounters with Deathstroke changed him the most of any villain, even Prometheus, cementing his legacy as one of the franchise's greatest antagonists. 1. Reverse Flash from The Flash. The Flash was blessed with the bulk of the Arrowverse's best villains, and none of them stand out quite like Reverse Flash. While the series featured quite a few evil speedsters over the years, none of them could compare to the sheer brutality and vile actions of Eobard Thawne aka Reverse Flash. Being the one behind the death of Barry's mother in the first place, the time-displaced villain is one of the most despicable, and yet most entertaining to watch. Reverse Flash was Team Flash's ultimate antagonist whose actions spanned the entire show, never fully dealt with until the climactic series finale. Throughout that entire time, he proved himself to be a deeply hateful and dangerous man, a ghost in the Speed Force that haunted Barry for his entire life as the Flash. It's safe to say that no other Arrowverse villain can hold a candle to the development, desperation, and depths of depravity as Reverse Flash. Thanks for watching this video. Please consider hitting the like button and subscribing.